This is PTV World. I am SYED SHABAHAT and you are watching Fault Lines. Days after days, weeks after weeks, the genocide in Gaza continues. The horrors of hunger, the sorrows of bombardment, people being killed in cold blood, women, children, elderly alike. The recent incident that shocked the entire world was a drone strike taking place while people were trying to collect food from a truck that was going to provide them with some basic supplies. The drone that actually attacked also made their footages, which went on air on most of the Western media. And still, the world at large is silent on this barbarism. This genocide continues. And amid all of this turmoil, the United States has announced that it will start airdropping food supplies for the Gazans. Now, this is very important development because the United States, when it tries to intervene into a crisis, normally enters with a lot of muscle, with a lot of might. But this time, they have only opted to go with airdrops, which, according to some American experts or American critics, would be mere optics. To talk about this very pertinent issue, we have invited two guests in our show. Both of them are joining me on Skype. My first guest is Dr. Asad Noor Mirza. He's orthopedic surgeon, vice chairman, Pakistan Palestinian Forum, executive member, Muslim Doctors Forum Punjab, and also general secretary for Association of University Physicians and Surgeons Pakistan. Dr. Sahab, I welcome you to the show. And with him, I have Professor Carl Carlton Teller. He is an author, professor, researcher. He is from University of Akron and joining me on Skype. Professor Carlton Teller, I welcome you to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Dr. Asad, I would want to start from you. So whatever is happening in Gaza has invited a lot of attention from everywhere in the world. People in Pakistan are also quite concerned about it. Your forum, Pakistan Palestinian Forum, is also quite active these days. What do you think would make us able to do something for the people of Gaza? Because apparently no major power, no big country is stepping forward to help the people of Gaza.
Yes, thank you very much for having me again on your prestigious show again. As I previously said in our last sitting, things are just the same. Actually, we have to see the intentions with which Israel has started all this operation. Their intention is to wipe out Gaza. They have their ulterior motives. They will never stop. Nothing can stop them. So if the bigger powers in the veto state, especially, if they are not helping, so at least the oil producing companies, they can go for an economic boycott of Israel. So this can definitely stop the war.
And Dr. Shab, also, since you are a health expert as well, the health infrastructure in this very poor city of Gaza is also in shambles. We have seen hospitals being occupied by the Israeli ground forces. We have seen surgeries taking place without anesthesia. And still these health workers are working amid all of this crisis. What are your apprehensions? What are your fears about the health infrastructure of Gaza at the moment?
You see, there is no sound infrastructure left now. Rather, the Israelis, they are killing doctors and nurses and all the paramedical support staff as well. They are, marching in the hospitals and they are killing the patients and the staff working over there. So they are not leaving anyone behind. They are killing everyone. So I'm afraid thousands of doctors who went there to support these poor people, I'm afraid that they won't be able to come out alive from there.
Dr. Carl Carlton Teller, why do you believe Israel has been able to do all of this despite the international outcry? That is so visible now. I mean, everyone in the world is concerned about it, but nobody has been able to stop the state of Israel. What do you think can be the reason behind Israel doing all of this without absolutely any consequences?
It's a great question, but it's a complicated question. And really, I think you need to focus on two things to answer that question. One thing is politics within Israel itself. And then the other thing is politics in the countries that are very important to Israel, which is actually not very many countries. There aren't very many countries that have leverage over Israel. So if we talk about politics in Israel, and we think about the major actor who's driving this campaign against Gaza, clearly it's Netanyahu. And Netanyahu, I believe, is motivated by two things in this kind of no holds barred attack on Gaza that we're seeing, which is, as you said, outraging even Israel's supporters in the West. And it's driven by two things. One thing is that he is in a coalition that is very, very extreme in Israeli politics. So he's got coalition members who are committed to the idea of cleaning Gaza of Gazans, of making it somehow part of Israel. And he believes that he needs those people in his coalition. If they leave, the coalition collapses, he's no longer prime minister. If he's no longer prime minister, he will likely go to jail. So being prime minister means that he's immune right now from prosecution and going to jail. So this is a very, very big part of it. The other thing is that Israeli public opinion is still behind the operation in Gaza. There's huge outrage in Israel about the 7th October attack. And from the polling that we're seeing, many Israelis, if not most Israelis, view this as an existential threat to Israel. So they are convinced that going after Israel's enemies within Gaza is something that absolutely has to be done. So this is a big part of it, domestic Israeli politics. In the United States, which is obviously the most important country supporting Israel, this is also about politics. The Republicans are soundly behind Israel, no matter what Israel does. There's very few Republicans who have raised concern about the conduct of Israeli military operations. And the other thing is that there's a very important part of the Democratic Party, which is pro-Israel. So these political factors are really playing a very large role in allowing Netanyahu to get away with this type of campaign, which is in most people's minds, I think, breaking the laws of war.
But Professor, how generally the public in the United States is looking into this war? And I'm asking you this question because many countries around the world have a political approach toward any domestic or international crisis, but we are living in the age of social media, which actually brings you the reality candidly, rather nakedly. You see the naked part of truth, and this actually helps the public to have the right understanding of what is happening beyond politics. So are there any Americans that stand with humanity, who stand with peace, or would want this everything to get over, would want the United States to put foot on ground and stop this genocide?
So you're very correct to bring up social media as a major factor in this. And the thing to understand about social media in the United States and just about every country that I know is that social media tends to feed you the stories and the images that you like. So it reinforces attitudes, it reinforces perspectives rather than it changes minds. And so if you look at your average American social media feed, it's very much the kinds of things that they like, because there's algorithms that are built into social media that kind of reinforce your viewpoints and reinforce your stereotypes of people. And so what you'll see is among more liberally minded Americans, they get a feed that says that this is a horrible humanitarian situation, that the Israelis are conducting themselves in a way that is very, very detrimental to the health and well-being of the Gazans, that 30,000 plus Gazans have died. They're getting that information if they're more liberally minded. If they're more conservative, they're really not getting that information. If they get it, it's always with caveats. Israel's being as careful as possible, or Hamas or some other group would be using ways to heighten the civilian casualties. So you have to take that into account. This plays a big role in how Americans view this conflict.
Coming back to you, Dr. Asad Noor. Importantly, now the food prices have also started aggravating. The Gazans are starving. No food is allowed inside. There are very few exceptions. We have seen time and again that the food supplies, the water supplies have been targeted by their strikes, not by military stopping them or not allowing them to get in. There have been airstriked several times. So how do you see this developing hunger crisis inside Gaza? Do you think this is going to cause more lives, cause more life losses than the war has done so far?
Yes, definitely. Adding to what our worthy guest has already told us, that this shortage of food and other essentials for sustenance of life would definitely serve the purpose of Israel and also those forces who are behind Israel. So see, all they want is just to wipe out the people who are native to the Gaza Strip.
The Biden administration is perhaps in the last few months of its existence, and while they are looking to move forward politically, the party is trying to gather more support. How, in this context, they are viewing the conduct of Israel toward this crisis?
Well, you're right to bring up that we're in the middle of a presidential campaign in the United States, and that's playing a big role here. As I said, Republicans line up behind Israel nearly 100%. The Democratic Party is split on this. And so you've got more progressive Democrats who are very opposed to Biden's policy. And we're even seeing some of these people in positions in government resigning and protesting the policy. Now, part of Biden's problem is that there's part of the Democratic Party, particularly Jewish activists who are supportive of Israel, who are important for the Democratic Party, who are pressuring Biden to continue with the support for Israel. The other thing for Biden, though, is it's not just American politics. It's also what leverage does Biden have over Netanyahu? He can cut off the support in terms of new weaponry, new artillery, shells, that kind of thing, which are considered important to the conduct of this war. The Israelis probably have enough to continue this war for quite a while. If Biden does that, the biggest problem for him is that he will potentially lose the election, and then you get Donald Trump in office, and Donald Trump would very likely be even harder on the Palestinians than Biden would be, which is kind of hard to believe given how horrible things are. But Trump clearly showed that he had no interest at all in the welfare of the Palestinians when he was president, because he basically was catering to a very pro-Israel part of the Republican Party. So, unfortunate for the Gazans is the country that probably has the most power to help them right now is politically not in a position to help them. And this is the unfortunate nature of American politics right now.
Dr. Asad, you are yourself a social worker, and you are also very closely viewing the situation in Gaza. What do you think are the challenges of the humanitarian workers? And when I say humanitarian workers, I would want you to address the individual workers that are trying to help people, and also the institutions that are trying to reach out despite all odds and are attracting criticism from around the world.
So you see, people who are now actively on the ground, the words which reach via, indirect sources to us, especially from the Doctors Without Borders platform, they tell the people who have told us that they know that they might not make it back to their homes and to their native countries. So they are just there for those poor people over there, because they have told us that these soldiers from Israel, when they encounter them, they just simply kill them. They don't, think for a moment that this person is wearing the insignia of the press, or he's a healthcare worker, he's a doctor, or he's wearing this uniform of a surgeon, or he's performing surgery in an OT on a very young 3-year-old child, who has been bombed earlier by these brutal people. So this is damaging the overall situation big human crises are already taking place within Gaza, and I don't know what United Nations can do if the Security Council is not at its back, which I suppose that it is not. So, giving some aids and uh, aid dropping food and stuff, this is not how we can save the Palestinians. And I might just add one point with what what the guest said, that when in the time of office of Mr. Trump, he referred to the Palestine issue as the issue of the Palestinians. So I previously said that he doesn't recognize this as a two-state solution or a two-state issue. He just addressed them as a small faction somewhere in the far-flung areas of Israel, who are creating problem and havoc for the Israeli government. Rather, if when all the world is pointing towards a two-state solution and everyone agrees, but still, so in short, if the U.S. Can do something about it, this war will end. Or the oil-producing countries, they can also indirectly end this war.
This brings me back to you, Dr. Kaul. United States has once again vetoed the effort being made diplomatically at the Forum of United Nations for a ceasefire. And this actually attracts not only a lot of criticism from around the world, but also makes situation very complicated for the students of international relations to understand what United States might be thinking at large as a polity while putting its hand up in showing that it doesn't want to stop this war. Help us to understand this attitude.
Well, if you focus on it simply from the perspective of American interests, and you don't take domestic politics into account, then the United States would have a much different policy towards this war than it does. It would force Israel to stop the campaign in Gaza because it's not in American interest at all to continue this. This is extremely detrimental to the United States. And scholars of international relations have raised many times that the U.S. relationship with Israel doesn't seem to make a lot of sense from kind of our standard ways of understanding international politics. Just think about oil, which is extremely important to the American economy. That supply has been damaged or threatened because of the United States' support for Israel. So this is really driven by domestic politics more than anything else. And when it comes to the UN, my understanding of successive American administrations' positions about the UN is don't embarrass or don't force Israel to the wall in the UN. Talk to the Israelis in private. And I know that the Biden administration is having multiple conversations with the Israeli government right now to try to get them to get to a ceasefire, to allow humanitarian aid in, to be more careful in how they wage this military campaign. And what I keep hearing is that they're having very limited success in getting the Israelis to listen. And this may be due to the Israeli domestic political situation. It also may be due to maybe many of the Israelis who are conducting this war have become very callous towards Palestinians and don't really care if they're committing what could be considered by many as war crimes. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what's in the minds of the Israeli military when they carry out these operations. I don't have a looking glass into that. But if you just, for example, look at the event that happened recently with their firing on people who are trying to get aid from these aid trucks in Gaza, it really makes you wonder what's going on in the heads of these soldiers. Have they become more callous, or is this part of policy? What is going on that leads to this kind of thing? Because it's damaging to Israel. I mean, if they become the global pariah that they've become, that's not good for Israel, because at a certain point, the United States has to say, look, you're damaging us. We are damaged by being your friend. And we're already there in the United States.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kaul. Thank you very much, Dr. Asad, for being guest in this part of program. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a break and we'll join you back with second segment of the program. Stay with us. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk about a very pertinent issue in context of Pakistan. You know, Pakistan is one of the fastest growing population in this region. When it comes to the growth of population, Pakistan is far ahead of Bangladesh, Iran, even India. And there are multiple issues that are responsible for it. One of these issues is marriages of children, early marriages in Pakistan. Is one of the problems that we have not been able to overcome as a society. According to the statistics shared by the United Nations, 21% of the girls are married in Pakistan before reaching the age of 18. To add further into the complication, in many parts of this country, 16 years of age for a girl is normally considered to be legally correct age for getting married, whereas the age for boys is considered to be 18. Not only administrative or political issues are at play in making this a more complicated problem, but also there are legal and legislative complications that are adding into the crisis for Pakistan. To talk about the legal and legislative aspect of it, I have today requested a guest to be in my studio who is not only an expert of this subject but also a legislative expert who has done a lot of efforts around the subject, and we are going to hear from him what problems Pakistan is facing in this regard. His name is Advocate Sharafat Ali Chaudhry, who is my guest in studio. Sir, I welcome you to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
In the context that we are talking, help us to understand why child marriages is a sign of worry for people like yourself, and why do you see this to be such a social horror for Pakistan?
Well, I think we need to look a bit back into the history that the Child Marriage Restraint Act is of 1929. So this means it's almost around 100 years that has been considered that the child marriage is an issue around the globe, and definitely it's an issue within the Indo-Pak and since then in Pakistan as well. So even a law being made back in 1929 highlights the issue. The child marriage, early marriages definitely have multiple implications. It has health consequences. It got educational consequences, and taking the context in Pakistan, you know that the marriage is not between the two parties only. A girl moves to another family, and you know that you ought to take care of a complete family there. So when you are a child, you need care to yourself. Somebody should take care of yourself. I mean that you're a child. How can you take care of your own self, your own babies, and even the whole family, the husband's family? So it brings a lot of responsibilities. And definitely when a child is married, and in most cases to an adult, a child by no means having a kind of equal status with an adult. So how can that marriage goes well?
You said the first draft of law was made in 1929. Pakistan got independent in 1947. We are today living in 2024. So in all of this time, there must be a lot of legal efforts made to make laws around the subject and to legalize or to have a legal age of girls getting married reaching a certain age level. Have it been so?
Well, the initial law, the law of 1929, that definitely came, you can say, was adopted by Pakistan. It has a legal age, as you mentioned in your intro, that for the girls it got 16 years of age, and for boys the marriageable age is 18 years. But after the devolution, after the 18th Amendment in 2010, when this subject of child marriage, minor, religion, these all were the devolved subjects. So the provinces could make their own legislation. So Sindh was the first province that back in 2013, Sindh made Sindh Child Marriage Restraint Act 2013. And that actually brought, you can say, a lot of changes for the first time in Pakistan. The age of now in this province of the Sindh, the age of child, whether it's a girl or a boy, it's 18 years for the both. They also enhanced the punishment that's up to 3 years of imprisonment. I mean that raising it from just a 1 month or only a fine. And it also, you can say, empowered the police to register FIR directly, I mean, for taking up speedily cognizance. So that was the first. Later on in 2015, Punjab made amendment, but Punjab didn't touch the age actually. The critical
When did Punjab
question.
try to do that?
Well, I think it's up to the legislators that, I mean, that why didn't they touch this? Definitely it's considered
No,
a
I said,
kind
when
of
did they try? When did they try? You said this ended-
2015.
2015. 2 years later.
Yeah, 2015, and they actually in Punjab now the you can say punishment for the child marriage is enhanced. The fine is up to 50,000.
That's a very interesting point,
Yeah.
and that would be my next question. So before 2015 in Punjab, what was the punishment for marrying a child who is a minor?
1 month or fine. And if I'll be magistrate and you contract marriage with a child, I'll be your friend. I can fine you maybe 1 rupee, and you'll be
And,
done with this
and
case.
how about the marriage that is taking place? Will that
Yeah.
remain to be a legal arrangement, or would that
Well,
be dissolved?
interestingly, this legislation doesn't answer this question. I mean that even if, for example, the husband is punished, the male counterpart is punished, that marriage still remains intact. So that's the most you can say unfortunate part of the legislation, that the legislation doesn't you can say question this answer. And now interestingly the question is more complicated, that now it's a one issue, that's a child marriage issue, it's a national issue, and the Sindh got a different legislation. In Punjab it's a different legislation. I mean that the punishment for the same offense is different, and for the rest part of the Pakistan the punishment is different. It's a same old law of 1929 that's still in practice. So in one country on one issue we are having 3 different legislations. Interestingly, rather ironically, the federal government during you can say last 10 years tried nearly 6 times. There's been 6 different bills been introduced. None of the bills been successful. All's been defeated due to one or the other reasons. We can simply assume that the legislator wants that child marriages should continue in this way. Recently, the National Commission on the Status of Women hold a lot of consultations over this issue with the experts, with the parliamentarians, with the other stakeholders like National Commission on the Rights of the Child, and they come up with a bill. That bill got consensus within the Law Ministry, the Human Rights Ministry, and even the Council of Islamic Ideology also you can say backed that bill, and the Ministry of Religious Affairs also actually gave the positive comments that this bill should move forward. But unfortunately, in the meantime, I mean that since the bill was still in process, the government's previous time and that
why is a very important question, because this is such a pertinent issue. On one side, it is contributing to the traumas of our society, where children are inflicted with the horrors of early marriages, giving birth again and again, having more children. It's adding into our population. It is adding into the poverty. Why, as a polity, we have not been able to respond to this crisis? What do you think, based on your experience and exposure so far, is primarily the reason we have not been able to act timely?
You know, there's been a religious reason that's been usually quoted, that under Islam there's no you can say restriction to have you can say a marriageable age when someone is an adult. I mean that, but there is a legal definition of being an adult as well when you call in, for example, in a bulughat. So when you reach till that stage, and that's about your physical conditions, it's not about the age numbers. So this has been one of the critical questions that you can say people usually refer to that. I mean talking about, but interestingly now the situation is totally different. As I said, that the Council of Islamic Ideology actually approved that bill where the age was 18 years. So I mean that they can go with the number of the age. Same, the Ministry of Religious Affairs gave very positive comments on this bill. And interestingly, a petition was filed before the Federal Shariat Court by declaring this Child Marriage Restraint Act of 1929 as illegal and un-Islamic. But interestingly, Federal Shariat Court came out with the judgment where they said that when an issue becomes to an extent that needs to be stopped, the state got every right to make legislation on that particular issue. Though Federal Shariat Court didn't talk about the numbers, but it says, the judgment of the Federal Shariat Court says that it's the duty of the state actually to make legislation to stop, you can say, any ill that's harmful for the children.
And Sharafa Sahab, don't you think after devolution, which is certainly a commendable thing, which is in true spirit of democracy, which is happening everywhere in the world, the United States itself is a very big example of devolution. But don't you think that with devolution, when subjects have been delegated down to the provinces, the expertise, the sensitivity of the subjects have perhaps not trickled down to the same extent, and thereby we have not seen the same zeal and fervor in the provinces to take up such critical matters of national significance?
I think taking it from a different perspective, you got national institutions, for example, National Commission on the Status of Women, and then there are provincial commissions on the status of women that can work on this. Then there is a National Commission on the Rights of the Child. It's a federal institution. It can work, I mean, throughout Pakistan, can create awareness. The basic, you can say, function of there is actually to protect the rights of the children. Definitely the provinces are independent, and every province has got their own legislations as well. I think this is a kind of issue that we cannot give any province or any government a kind of discount that they should lag behind, since there are plenty of studies. You also referred in your beginning, I mean that of a study that refers the data throughout Pakistan. There has been a child marriages. Interestingly, even in Sindh, where the punishment is higher, even the recent data shows that there are a lot of child marriages, comparatively more child marriages even than in
Sharafa Sahab, now we have just recently had another general elections, and we are going to see a government as prime ministers to be elected tomorrow, inshallah, God willing, and it's an arrangement where different political forces are coming together to bond a national cohesion, to form a government that certainly will consist of several democratic ideologies gelling in together. What are your expectations and what are your hopes from the upcoming government with regards to this very pertinent issue?
Child marriage is a national issue. All the provinces should also take care of this one. This is one of the form of gender-based violence. It got its health implications. It got economic implications. It got psychological implications. Pakistan is signatory to almost all the human rights, all the key human rights treaties. And in particular, I would refer to the, you can say CRC, the Convention on the Rights of the Child. So Pakistan is responsible to protect the rights of every child, and definitely when you can say a child in a you can say lower age, a child is married, definitely the child suffers. It's a violation of that child's rights, whether male or female. And I would say that, and I can hope that this new government would take care of its international commitments, its own you can say domestic commitments, the guidelines that has been recently even given by the Federal Shariat Court, and even I would go beyond that. There's been a recently judgment from the Islamabad High Court, which says that the child marriage should be treated under the categories of child sexual abuse, because there's no other purpose of the marriage I mean,
except for building a. Thank you very much, Sharafat Ali Chaudhry Saab, for enlightening us on this very pertinent subject. Ladies and gentlemen, since we are short of time, let's quickly move to the last topic of today's program. And our focus is again going to be on the continent of Africa, a country known as Congo. We call it DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, is facing one of the worst violences of its kind since 1996. You heard me right. It has been quite a while since Congo is facing this catastrophe. Right after 1994 Rwanda's genocide, when millions of people and rebel groups moved into DRC with its porous borders, this genocide, this conflict started, which has so far claimed 5 million lives. You heard me right, 5 million lives. And the United Nations also says that 6.9 million people are internally displaced. Another 19.4 million people are looking for international humanitarian aid to reach DRC. And so far, the international players have not been very active in making humanitarian contributions. My guest in this part of program is Adam Rosell. Adam is author. He's also an analyst. He is an expert of African affairs and writes frequently for militantvia.com, which is one of the leading blogs covering the international conflicts. Adam, tell us about the Congo crisis and the backdrop of whatever is happening at the moment.
The DRC is home to a wide variety of mineral resources that are of great importance to the global economy. These include traditional metals such as copper and gold, but also vital rare earth minerals such as cobalt and coltan. Minerals such as these are essential to the manufacture of goods such as electronics and are of great interest to the major powers of the world that manufacture these. The largest manufacturer of electronics on the planet is China, and their investments in Congolese mining have expanded dramatically in recent years, and it was just announced recently that they will be investing another $4.7 billion just in the mining infrastructure in the DRC in the next few years. So very.
Adam, I want to understand the drivers of this conflict and the causes that have led to such a massive violence, that have led to such a catastrophic humanitarian crisis.
The conflict started in 1997 as a result of the spillover of the Rwandan genocide that eventually overthrew the Mobutu government. In the decades since, we've seen over 6 million deaths as these various groups, be they foreign and domestic, fight over the resources of the region. 6 million deaths is, to put that into perspective, makes this the most violent and deadly conflict zone on Earth since the Second World War. The latest conflict is the result of the M23 movement, which has made major gains against government forces in the region. The group was founded in 2013, but really started making gains again this past couple of years in 2021. The March 23rd or M23 movement is almost certainly funded by the Rwandans, and even the Americans and the Europeans are saying this now, even though the Rwandans deny it. The gains that it's made have been substantial, and the humanitarian costs are massive. There are refugee flows across the region, and the group has practically besieged the region's largest city of Goma, which is home to some 2 million people.
As you have defined the conflict in a robust manner, tell us, how do you see the future of this conflict going forward? Do you think it is going to continue for a long time? Do you think there are any plans by the government itself or by the international actors to wrap things up, to bring all the stakeholders on a table and to sort out the issue that they have?
The UN peacekeeping mission in the DRC or MONUSCO is planning to completely withdraw all of its more than 16,000 troops from the country by the end of this year. As we've seen in various conflicts around the world, air power is not enough to quell a well-equipped and well-trained rebel unit, and the M23 continues to make gains, even with the government's use of Chinese drones. There's talk of the DRC purchasing more aircraft, specifically Chinese fighter jets. But again, we're dealing with the same issue here. Eventually, if they're going to retake the region and have some kind of stability, they'll need to commit ground forces, and that's a very dangerous prospect. Looking at the potential for foreign involvement, there's been a lot of countries in the region that have withdrawn or plan to withdraw from conflicts, like for instance in Somalia. There may not be the appetite, though I think the Ugandans and Burundians will likely keep some presence as it's in their economic interest to do so. On the bigger picture, China's domestic economy is seeing profound structural changes right now, and I'm not sure how much appetite they have for getting involved deeply in a conflict such as this, other than to sell more weapons in exchange for resources and long-term contracts to the DRC government. The DRC military, for this reason, is probably going to be put to the test pretty significantly in the coming months, as well as the Ugandans and Burundians. The Burundians have already closed off their border with Rwanda, and Rwanda is increasingly becoming kind of a pariah of the region. Eventually, you could see this having major blowback for President Kagame in Rwanda, which is a whole other problem to think about down the road. But in terms of what's going on in the DRC right now, I don't foresee things calming down anytime soon.
Thank you very much, Adam Russell, for being guest in our show. Ladies and gentlemen, as we heard from the last guest in the program, the country known as DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, is in an eye of a storm. The conflict that has not stopped since 1996. Not only the country requires sustainable democratic solution, but it also requires post-conflict peace-building exercise to be done by the United Nations and other peace builders of the world. We'll join you next week with another program. And until then, Allah Hafiz.